Sometimes life teaches us lessons in silence, not with noise, not with drama, but with the quiet ache of realization. There was a time when I believed I understood love. I thought I knew what it meant to hold someone, to trust someone, to believe in someone. But the truth is, I was wrong. Not about love itself, but about you. I misunderstood your patience as distance. I mistook your silence for indifference. I saw your loyalty as something ordinary, when in reality, it was extraordinary. And today, standing here with a heart that finally sees clearly, I want to begin with a confession. A simple, honest truth that carries the weight of every regret and every realization. I was wrong about you, my love. This is not a story about guilt. This is a story about awakening, about the moment when pride steps aside and love finally speaks. Because sometimes the strongest thing a heart can say is not, I was right. It's, I finally understand you. I used to believe that love was loud, that it had to arrive like a storm shaking the ground beneath my feet, demanding attention, demanding certainty, demanding fireworks that painted the sky in impossible colors. I thought love was supposed to feel obvious, dramatic, undeniable, every single second of every single day. I thought love was supposed to be easy to recognize, easy to define, easy to hold in my hands like something solid and permanent. And because I believed that, I kept missing the quiet miracles happening right in front of me. I didn't realize that love can be gentle, that it can move like a soft breeze instead of thunder, that it can whisper instead of shout, that it can stay even when everything else is uncertain. And you were never loud. You were never dramatic. You were never the kind of love that demanded the spotlight. You were the kind of love that quietly made sure the lights were on when I came home. The kind of love that stayed awake when the world slept. The kind of love that showed up without applause, without recognition, without guarantees. I thought love had to feel like excitement every day, but you showed me love can feel like peace. And I didn't understand peace back then. I mistook it for boredom. I mistook it for distance. I mistook it for something missing. I didn't know that peace is the rarest thing a heart can ever find. I remember the moments when you chose patience instead of anger, when you chose understanding instead of blame, when you chose silence instead of arguments that would have been easy to win. At the time, I thought you were holding back. I thought you didn't care enough to fight. I thought your calmness meant you weren't afraid of losing me. I didn't realize that you were strong enough to love without needing to prove it. I was wrong. I was wrong when I thought your quiet meant you didn't feel deeply. I was wrong when I thought your kindness was ordinary. I was wrong when I thought your presence was guaranteed. I lived as if your love was permanent, as if your heart was something that would always stay exactly where I left it, no matter how carelessly I handled it. And the strange thing about realization is that it doesn't arrive all at once. It arrives in fragments, in small moments that slowly rearrange the way you see the past. It arrives in memories that suddenly feel heavier than they used to. It arrives in silence that suddenly feels louder than noise ever did. I started remembering the way you looked at me when I wasn't paying attention, the way you listened when I spoke about things that didn't matter, the way you celebrated my victories as if they were your own, the way you forgave mistakes I didn't even apologize for yet, the way you believed in the version of me I hadn't become yet. You were always looking toward my future while I was still lost in my present, and I didn't see it. I thought love had to feel exciting every day, but you were building something deeper than excitement. You were building something steady, something quiet, something that could survive the days when excitement disappears and all that remains is the decision to stay. I didn't understand the power of staying. I thought leaving was freedom. I thought distance was independence. I thought detachment was strength. I didn't realize that the strongest thing someone can do is stay even when it would be easier to walk away. You stayed through my confusion, through my doubts, through my restless search for something I couldn't even name. You stayed when I questioned everything. You stayed when I questioned us. You stayed when I made you feel like staying was optional. And I see it now. I see the quiet courage it took for you to remain present in a place where your love wasn't fully understood. I see the bravery it took for you to keep giving without knowing if the giving would ever be returned the same way. I see the strength it took for you to love someone who didn't yet know how to recognize what real love looked like. Because real love doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like consistency. Sometimes it looks like patience. Sometimes it looks like a hand that never lets go even when it isn't being held tightly enough in return. I remember the nights when you asked me simple questions, hoping for honest answers. Questions about dreams, about fears, about the future. And I answered them like they were small talk, like they were casual conversations that didn't carry weight. I didn't realize you were building a home out of those answers. I didn't realize you were trying to understand the shape of the life we could share. I thought you were asking questions, You were building foundations. And while you were building, I was wandering. While you were planting seeds, I was chasing storms. While you were choosing stability, I was searching for excitement in places that never felt like home. I didn't realize home was already beside me. I thought love needed proof, constant reassurance, constant validation, constant reminders. I didn't realize the greatest proof of love is presence, the quiet, unwavering decision to remain, the daily choice to care, to listen, to show up even when the world feels heavy and complicated and uncertain. You showed up in ways I didn't notice, in ways that didn't demand applause, in ways that didn't ask for recognition. And I took that silence for granted. I assumed what was quiet was simple. I assumed what stayed would always stay. I never asked how much courage it took for you to keep believing in something I didn't fully understand yet. I remember the way you looked at the future like it was something gentle and possible. The way you spoke about time like it was an ally instead of an enemy. The way you believed that love grows instead of fades. I didn't understand how someone could be so calm in a world that felt so uncertain. Now I understand that certainty wasn't about guarantees, it was about commitment. It was about choosing to believe in something even when nothing promises it will be easy. You believed in us when I believed in myself, and that realization feels heavier than any regret I've ever carried. Because regret isn't loud, it doesn't arrive with fireworks or thunder. It arrives quietly in the spaces between memories, in the pauses between thoughts, in the moments when you finally understand what someone meant to you after time has already moved forward. I remember the way you celebrated small moments, the way you found joy in ordinary days, the way you turned simple evenings into memories. At the time, I thought we were just passing time. I didn't realize you were turning time into something meaningful. I thought big gestures mattered most. You understood that small moments last longer. You knew that love is built in conversations that don't feel important until they become memories, in shared silences that don't feel significant until they become comfort, in routines that don't feel special until they become irreplaceable. I was chasing extraordinary moments while you were building an extraordinary life out of ordinary days, and I missed it. Not because it wasn't there, but because I didn't know where to look. I didn't know love could feel like safety, like calm, like quiet understanding. I didn't know love could feel like someone choosing you without needing to announce it, without needing to prove it, without needing to explain it. You chose me in ways I didn't recognize, and now every memory feels different. Every moment feels heavier. Every silence feels louder. Because hindsight has a way of illuminating everything that once felt invisible. I see the effort behind your patience, the courage behind your kindness, the strength behind your calm, the depth behind your quiet love. I see how much you gave without asking for anything dramatic in return. How much you believed without demanding guarantees. How much you stayed without making it a condition. I see it now in a way that feels impossible to ignore, impossible to forget, impossible to undo. Because understanding arrives late sometimes. Late enough to change the way the past feels. Late enough to make memories heavier than they used to be. Late enough to transform ordinary moments into irreplaceable ones. I thought love had to be proven every day with grand gestures. You proved it every day with presence, with patience, with the quiet consistency of someone who never stopped choosing the same person over and over again. And now I understand that love isn't about perfection. It isn't about never making mistakes. It isn't about always knowing the right words or the right timing or the right way to hold someone's heart. It's about learning, about growing, about realizing the truth even when the realization arrives later than it should. Because love doesn't disappear when we misunderstand it. It waits. It stays. It gives us the chance to see it clearly when we're finally ready to look closely enough, and I'm still learning how to look closely enough. I used to think love was something you prove with words, that if you said the right things at the right time, everything would stay exactly where it belonged. I believed conversations were the foundation, promises were the structure, and certainty was the roof that kept everything safe. But the truth is, love is quieter than promises and stronger than words. It lives in the spaces between sentences, in the pauses between thoughts, in the moments when nothing is said and everything is understood. You understood silence in a way I never did. I used to fill silence with noise, with assumptions, with fears that grew louder the longer nothing was spoken. I thought silence meant distance. I thought it meant something was wrong. I thought it meant love was fading when, in reality, love was simply resting, breathing, existing in a calm space that didn't need to be explained. You knew that silence can be safe, that two hearts don't need to speak every second to remain connected, that comfort sometimes looks like quiet presence instead of constant reassurance. I didn't understand that kind of calm. I didn't trust it, I didn't know how to believe in something that didn't constantly announce itself. I confused peace with emptiness. I confused quiet love with fading love. And because of that confusion, I created distance where there was none. I questioned things that never needed questioning. I searched for problems in places where love was simply being patient. You were patient in ways I never appreciated at the time. Patient with my doubts. Patient with my fears. Patient with the parts of me that didn't yet know how to receive love without suspicion. I thought patience meant waiting for something better. I didn't realize patience meant believing in something enough to stay. I remember the way you never rushed me. You never demanded answers I wasn't ready to give. You never forced conversations I didn't know how to have. You gave me time when I didn't even realize I needed it. You gave me space without creating distance. You gave me freedom without making me feel alone. That kind of love is rare. So rare that I didn't recognize it when it was right in front of me. I thought love had to feel urgent, that it had to feel intense and overwhelming and impossible to ignore. I didn't realize that urgency is often fear in disguise, that intensity can sometimes be chaos, pretending to be passion, that the love that lasts is often the love that moves slowly enough to build something real. You were never in a hurry. You never treated love like a race or a competition or a test that needed to be passed. You treated love like a journey, like something meant to be experienced instead of conquered. I didn't understand journeys back then. I wanted destinations. I wanted certainty. I wanted guarantees. I wanted to know where everything was going before I allowed myself to enjoy where we were. You were enjoying the present while I was worrying about the future. And now I understand that the present was the most important part. I remember the way you celebrated small progress, the way you found hope in little steps, the way you believed that growth didn't need to be dramatic to be meaningful. I thought progress had to be obvious. You understood that the most important growth often happens quietly. You saw potential where I saw uncertainty. You saw possibility where I saw risk. You saw a future where I saw questions. And instead of trying to convince me, you simply stayed. You allowed time to do what words couldn't. You trusted that understanding would arrive eventually. I didn't realize how much trust that required. Trust is invisible when everything feels secure. It becomes visible only when we look back and see how many times someone chose to believe in us without proof. How many times someone chose hope over doubt. How many times someone chose patience over frustration. You trusted me when I didn't fully trust myself. You believed in us when I wasn't sure what us even meant yet. And now I see the courage behind that belief. I see how much strength it took to love without guarantees. How much bravery it took to invest your heart in something that didn't come with certainty. How much faith it took to stay present in a story that was still being written. Because love is faith. Not blind faith, not reckless faith, but the quiet belief that something is worth building, even when the blueprint isn't finished. You believed in the blueprint while I was still trying to understand the idea of building. I didn't realize how rare it is to find someone who sees you as a work in progress and chooses to stay anyway. Someone who understands that growth takes time, and mistakes, and learning, and unlearning. Someone who doesn't expect perfection but believes in possibility. You never asked me to be perfect. You only asked me to be real. And I didn't understand how generous that was. I thought love meant being impressive, being strong, being certain, being someone who never hesitates or doubts or struggles. I didn't realize love means being honest about the hesitation, honest about the doubt, honest about the struggle. You were never afraid of honesty. You welcomed it. You made space for it. You treated vulnerability like strength instead of weakness. I didn't know how to be vulnerable back then. I didn't know how to admit uncertainty. I didn't know how to say, I don't know, without feeling like I was failing. So instead, I pretended to understand things I didn't understand. I pretended to feel things I hadn't fully processed. I pretended to be ready for things I was still learning how to accept. And you saw through it, not in a way that exposed me, but in a way that protected me, in a way that gave me room to grow without forcing me to admit I was still growing. That kind of gentleness is easy to overlook when you don't know how rare it is. I didn't know how rare it was. I thought kindness was common. I thought patience was normal. I thought understanding was expected. I didn't realize those things are gifts. Quiet gifts that don't announce themselves. Gifts that reveal their value only when you look back and realize how different things feel without them. You gave me those gifts without keeping score. You gave without making it feel like giving. You supported without making it feel like support. You loved without making it feel like effort. And because it felt effortless, I assumed it was easy. I didn't understand that the most meaningful effort often looks effortless from the outside. I didn't see the emotional work behind your calmness, the courage behind your patience, the resilience behind your consistency. I saw comfort and assumed it required no strength. Now I understand that comfort is built by strength. Real love doesn't need to prove itself every day because it's too busy being present every day. It doesn't need to announce its importance because its importance becomes obvious over time. It doesn't need to compete with excitement because it creates something deeper than excitement. It creates stability, safety, a sense of belonging that doesn't need to be questioned. I didn't understand belonging back then. I thought belonging meant losing independence. I thought it meant giving up freedom. I thought it meant becoming less of myself. I didn't realize belonging means becoming more of yourself with someone beside you. You never tried to change who I was. You never asked me to become someone else. You never tried to shape me into something easier to love. You loved me as someone who was still learning who they were. And that realization changes everything. It changes the way I see the past, the way I understand the present, the way I imagine the future. Because once you recognize real love, you can't unsee it. You can't pretend it was ordinary. You can't convince yourself it was simple. You can't forget the way it felt once you finally understand what it was. Understanding transforms memory. It turns ordinary days into meaningful ones. It turns simple conversations into important ones. It turns quiet moments into unforgettable ones. I remember the way you listened, really listened, not just to my words, but to the emotions behind them. The way you noticed the things I didn't say. The way you understood the pauses between sentences. I thought listening was passive. You showed me listening is active, intentional, powerful. To be heard is to be understood. To be understood is to be seen. And to be seen is one of the most powerful forms of love. You saw me before I knew how to see myself. You believed in the version of me that existed in possibility instead of certainty. And now I understand the responsibility that comes with being seen like that. It's not something to take lightly, not something to assume will always exist, not something to treat as permanent, without care. Love requires attention, not constant attention, not overwhelming attention, but intentional attention. The kind that notices some, all changes, the kind that values small moments, the kind that understands that the everyday details are what create a life together. You paid attention to details I didn't realize mattered. The way my mood shifted after a long day, the way my voice changed when I was excited, the way my energy faded when I was overwhelmed. You noticed things I didn't notice about myself. And instead of pointing them out, you adjusted quietly. You supported quietly. You cared quietly. You loved quietly. And now I understand that quiet love is the strongest love there is. Because it doesn't rely on noise. It doesn't rely on spectacle. It doesn't rely on constant reassurance. It relies on choice. The daily choice to care. The daily choice to stay. The daily choice to believe in something even when nothing demands you to. You chose love when it was easy. You chose love when it was complicated. You chose love when it was uncertain. You chose love when it was quiet. And I didn't understand the weight of that choice until time gave me the distance needed to see it clearly. Distance changes perspective. It shifts priorities. It reveals what once felt invisible, and now everything feels visible. Every moment of patience, every act of kindness, every quiet decision to stay. I see the love that was always there, waiting to be understood.